have the bat, you feel pretty confident that you're going to be able to control him. So TONGFU's lineup is done, and FNATIC, one more to go.
When you look at what TONGFU has picked here, I would actually be a little bit surprised if they didn't run an offensive tri-lane. I mean, when you talk about effective heroes at trying to shut down a Chin tri-lane, whenever you have a Bane, he could Nightmare one of the creeps if you have to. You're going to have Visage. And the Gyrocopter, of course, Gyro, a monster in an offensive tri-lane whenever he has heroes that can allow him to get close. And when you're going to have Nightmare for that, you're going to have Grave Chill out of Visage. That would be so good because it frees up 2 solo lanes for 2 heroes that really want a solo lane. And the times that you see Storm Spirit get completely out of control tend to be based on him getting a nice amount of experience, be it out of mid, or being given a solo safe lane, which might be the case as he would be matched up against a Prophet, which would be an annoying matchup for him, but he would still get the levels. He would still get a base amount of gold as FNATIC has completed their lineup with that Nature's Prophet, and this is a flat-out overwhelm you lineup. That's the only way to say it. They just want to get a bunch of stuff and run them into a tower.
Well, that's kind of been the game plan for either team so far in this best of 3 at least, you know. So, FNATIC, I do favor this kind of a style for them. I think that's pretty much the theme here, is this is more within their comfort zone. TONGFU can run a lot of different things. We've seen their versatility in the preliminaries already. The one thing that kind of concerns me for FNATIC is what could potentially happen is the Batrider versus the Nature's Prophet, and eventually Bat will be able to overwhelm you just because the Sticky is such a wide radius that you can typically hit Treants and the Prophet at the same time because you're not going to be getting that far away from the creep wave. So there is risk in that lane, but TONGFU could be running in for a level 1 clash here.
Yep, TONGFU, and you know, it's easy to underestimate just how strong a lineup with a Batrider is at level 1. If you put your first point in a Sticky Napalm and you're able to catch 1 or 2 with it, it makes it so hard for the enemy team to retreat, plus the bonus damage that comes from his own right click. So any team that has a Batrider in many cases will be pretty willing to at least look into the idea of a level 1 fight, but looks like TONGFU only dipping down to drop a ward or 2, and this comes down to something you had mentioned. I was actually sitting with you this morning with whenever Era said that, and you know, it's such a good point. If you're going to offensive tri-lane, in many ways the Radiant side is a little bit more advantageous, especially when it comes to vision and camp walking. We already see 2 put down, going to make it very difficult for this Chen, especially if they continue. And look at this, another sentry going down to block the hard camp, and that's going to be, you know, No-Tail's going to be a little bit pressed to get a nice start here.
This is going to be horrible if they don't find that other ward, but could be catching Sansheng here.
Yep, there's the open wounds, waiting on help. No-Tail's right behind him, trying to body block him. Here comes Hal, and that's going to be enough to scare him back. Since he had placed his first point in open wounds, he would not have had magic immunity for the Rocket Barrage, and level 1 Rocket Barrage is not something you want to mess with. Now we're going to have a Nightmare onto the Veno Fly, caught out. Sansheng still there, and there's the Grave Chill right afterwards. As you see, the damage output immense, and down he goes. Fly, first blood in game 2. Not the start FNATIC wanted, but TONGFU already looking big and in charge in this offensive tri-lane.
The offensive tri-lane from TONGFU was a little bit obvious, but they wanted to be able to get flying range to go for the Gale there. I think if he had just been a little bit closer, it could have very easily been a first blood for FNATIC. And this is a nightmare right now for FNATIC because their tri-lane has been dismantled. No-Tail can't stay in his woods anymore. He dropped the sentry to try to deward the camp, but they can't actually deward it until they have a flying courier. So he is forced out, which means that it's effectively a 2v3 in bottom, and already FNATIC are going to be having some problems here.
Up at top, we can see Trixie going one-on-one with King J, and No-Tail's there as well. So King J's going to have to be a little bit careful. I mean, he does have Firefly to fall back on, but we can already see he's in decent shape. And, I mean, really, when these lanes took shape, it looked pretty even. Moo ends up going mid against Hani, and Hani doing a great job, but Moo right there on his tail, 8-7. And, you know, No-Tail just going to be in great shape, or not in great shape, I should say, because, as you had mentioned, the preemptive warding by TONGFU, just basically, this just feels like another game where TONGFU just knew exactly what they needed to do to knock FNATIC out of their game plan, or at least slow it down.
Really impressive stuff, honestly. It's not often where so early into the game you just have this sense of one team is not going to be having the easiest time in the world, and that's really how I feel about FNATIC right now. The one little bit of solace that they have is that they can go in, they can try to gank Moo, which they're doing right now, actually.
And, yep, there we go. In mid, we're going to see the Storm Spirit picked off. And a nice kill from FNATIC as they tie it back up, get a little revenge for the first blood.
And it's really nice movement from NoTail. He realizes, I can't go top. We can't kill King J. Sprout does nothing against Firefly, and Nature's Prophet doesn't have any innate disables, so really nice choice of lane gank there. The Sentry's going to be fading soon from the big camp, so NoTail should be able to stay in his jungle if he manages to de-ward the other one that's blocking the big camp here. But still, getting one kill is going to be nice for Fnatic, but I think they kind of have to do more work than that if they want to really fully recover.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, their lineup is basically based on nothing but momentum. Whenever you grab a Nature's Prophet and a Chen, I mean, that Prophet's going to be able to contribute a bit after he gets built up, after his gold gain kicks in, of course. And we'll see how Trixie's going to end up building if he is going to grab a Midas. More and more players have actually been skipping the early Midas to occasionally prioritize other items. But again, yeah, looks like NoTail's actually going to smoke up. And they're going to try to get more work done as they know they need to do so, because if they don't get the momentum early on, they're just going to end up with one of those stall kind of feelings where maybe they'll get a tower or two.
Courier snipe.
And up here we go. There's the Courier. And makes it to the trees just in time. And Trixie going to be playing back at Lee. Well, no, never mind. He's going to run forward to the shot and get himself a set of boots. Down at bottom, we can see Era having a very difficult time. He's sitting at 2 last hits. 2 compared to the 22 of How. I mean, really, these lanes are just completely coming apart at the seams, and TONGFU just dominating.
TONGFU are totally abusing the fact that, like we said, 1 kill, warding a Chen's camp, really hard to deal with. Era might be in trouble down here, though.
Down at bottom, we're going to see him pursued out. He's trapped inside. Can do nothing but try to find his way out. Blocked in. Rocket barrage. He's going to rage and do what damage he can, but he knows it's all in vain and now we're actually going to see another kill in mid, but that time going to Fnatic. So Fnatic giving as good as they're getting, but still the gold gain 100% in favor of TONGFU. The 3 top in terms of CS belonging, at least in part, to TONGFU as it's tied up between Puck and the Storm Spirit.
You know, the one thing that keeps going through my mind right now is that Fnatic weren't expecting an aggressive tri-lane. If you look at Era's inventory, he doesn't have a stout shield. Even if you were planning on going tri versus tri and you have ranged supports against you and a ranged carry, you would pretty much always buy one in that situation. So maybe Fnatic really weren't expecting it, or maybe they just felt super confident, one or the other. I can't really see any reason why Era would start with those items if he thought that TONGFU were going to actually be laning against him. But things definitely still going well for them. There's some movement now on the side of Fnatic. Fly and NoTail are going to rotate over mid.
We're going to see Moo locked down for the moment. He's going to blink away. But yeah, no follow-up to the coil. 2-2 it remains. A little bit of movement here and there. But yeah, and this is exactly kind of what I'm talking about. You know, Hani spent the coil, but if they're not real careful, if they don't start making things happen elsewhere, you're going to have this feeling like we saw right there. They just kind of went for it and then petered out. They just couldn't follow it up. They didn't have the confidence to do so. They're going to rotate Fly and NoTail down to bottom now. And How and Banana are in position. San Shing's there as well. Centaur going to poke his big snout over across the woods and see that it's not the safest place to be at the moment. Storm's actually making his way through the woods right now, but the Bad Rider has got to be getting close to his blink at this point. Yeah, he's about halfway there.
And once he gets that blink, it's going to get even worse. It's not like normal where you say, do I want to last at the Lifestealer, do I want to go for the Puck, or do I want to go for the Chen? Well, the fact of the matter is, NoTail hasn't really had the most spectacular early game because his jungle got warded, and to his credit, he actually still has 1 kill and 1 assist, so his movement has been great, but he's still playing from behind, so you don't have to emphasize going for that hero as much. And Era, I mean, what can you say? He's got 10 creep kills at 6 minutes. He is definitely not having the time of his life either, so the Batrider's job is made easier by the fact that Fnatic are pretty much playing from behind from the get-go. So TONGFU, if they want to try to group up and start applying pressure, they can. The one good thing for Fnatic is that Moo has been really, really held down here in middle. He's not even 6 yet.
24 CS to the 32 of Puck. He hung in there in terms of that. I mean, obviously he got beat pretty badly, but not crushed. But yeah, as you mentioned, he's already ducked into the jungle just for fear of being caught out again before he hits level 6. Now we're going to see open wounds on the How. There's a Gale as well. Sanshing coming to try and help. Bates there. Does not have Fiend's Grip, and we will see the gyro drop and a Sprout. How beautiful initiation of Hani. Caught them both with the Waiting Rift and the Coil, and NoTail, who had about as bad a start as a Chin could hope, or could hate to have, now has 3 kills to his credit, 3-0-2. Fnatic blowing this game back open. And we were talking about momentum, Draskell. This is that catalyst they needed.
They needed that so badly, and they're going to be able to apply a lot of pressure to this tower as well. I don't think TONGFU are going to defend. The Gyrocopter is only level 5, so there's no call down. They are going to throw out the Glyph, but since the Batrider still doesn't have money for his Blink, I think FNATIC are going to be able to get their first tower of the game right here.
Tower down below half. Yep, not going to be any sort of a true response on Shane there in case they decide to push on through, and they very well might. I mean, No Tail's got an Ursa. Yeah, they're at least going to test the waters, at least try to force some kind of a reaction. Taking a look at the bat, he's just short of that Blink Dagger, and for sure, if he had it right now, they'd feel much better about taking a fight. Hani still has Coil on cooldown, so any kind of fight, there's actually going to be a Gale thrown out, Banana Cob with it. And FNATIC at least getting some work done. However, Hal in the meantime is creep cutting and getting a lot of CS out of this top lane. But looks like FNATIC finally will just give up the Ghost as the last of the creeps die. And mid, Moo even, who is now level 7, so he's going to have that mobility Storm Spirit is characterized by. Doing a little bit of damage to the tier 1, but it looks like both teams ready for a breather, fall back to their respective corners.
I like FNATIC's decision to fall back. No reason to push it too much. You just got a huge turnaround. You don't want to just go and throw that away. And the nice thing is that Hani is not really far behind at all. His CS was actually higher than the Storms until just recently. Moo's been able to recover, of course, due to that bottom gank. But he's going to have his Blink in about 600 gold. That does allow FNATIC to initiate pretty much whenever they see fit. So both these teams have the capability of jumping. I just always really favor Puck initiations because he's actually opted to max Waning Rift, so his silence is going to be 3 seconds, which means in that 3 seconds you're going to have Era able to hit on pretty much whoever he wants, and he's starting to recover now because TONGFU aren't actually sitting against him in the bottom lane. So FNATIC have definitely gotten themselves back into this game in a big way, and I know it's really early, but whenever you have Chen lineups and they're not able to accomplish a whole lot and you're forced to move a lot, it hurts them so bad. So I'm glad to see that FNATIC has been able to come back with that gank.
Yeah, most Chen lineups are kind of like a train. It takes a while to get them up to speed, but once they're there and they have that momentum, it takes a lot to slow them down. And very often you'll just see those kind of lineups derailed, if you follow the metaphor. And not going to be the case this time as FNATIC able to get the engines roaring very early on. 5-2 as we approach 10 minutes. We can see it's a very close game nonetheless. Less than 500 gold separating these two teams. 1,000 experience actually moving in favor of TONGFU. But yeah, I mean, when you look at where things were in the gold, TONGFU was on the way to a decent lead at this early stage. They were coming up on 1,500. Instead, they managed to turn around and give themselves a 500 gold lead. Now we are going to see TONGFU smoking up, and that Blink Dagger going to be shown off, and he's going to try to jump away. Beautiful play by Hani, showing off that APM. The Haste Rune certainly not hurting things either. Elsewhere, we can see the Prophet is hooked up with Era. They might try to split push this as very wisely, and this is just such good sense out of FNATIC, realizing, like, okay, there was probably a whole team there, and they were probably smoke ganking, which means they are completely out of position to defend this this wide side bottom lane tier 2, and they still have their tier 1 up, so perhaps thinking they can trade a tier 1 for a tier 2 here.
Definitely a trade you're going to want to make if you're FNATIC. They're going to TP to it, though, and King J is going to be able to blink away for the time being. I think he's more here to just delay it. I don't think he necessarily can stop it on his own.
Yeah. There's going to be open wounds on him, actually. They can't pursue him over the woods. A lot of damage being done. Era gets him with the Infest. What a play. Now the counter initiation cooldowns there, as is Grave Chill Storm. Going to get some payback with the Vortex. And TONGFU answers with a kill of their own. They're going to be able to deny this tower if they time it right. Let's see if there it is. Gyro gets the deny, and in the meantime, that tier 1 is still standing just outside of deny range. Such a heads-up play. Hang on. FNATIC actually going to bring down a tower elsewhere. Now, this is what FNATIC does best, and this is when they look the best. Whenever they're able to control the map to set the tone and pace of the game, and they are just so good at moving in small packs of 2, of 3, and finding openings in lanes, anticipating reactions out of the enemy team, and being elsewhere when those teleports occur to get something done. We are going to see FNATIC smoke up now. They've got 3 smoked up, 1 on the high side, Hani and No Tail, moving from bottom to top. And the rest of TONGFU actually in a very defensive posture right now. They recognize that this is a very tenuous time for them. They cannot afford to make too many more mistakes as they're beginning to fall behind.
Especially since the Chen finishes the mech. That's the big thing here for FNATIC. And because of the fact that the Venomancer went Arcanes, it means Chen doesn't have to waste the money on them. Typically, you'll see people, if they have a really good start, they'll go Arcanes because they know they can get the quick mech. No Tail, we know he didn't have that good of a start because he had to leave his jungle straight away. So now TONGFU are in a situation where they can't actually fight. So they're going to end up trading the Tier 1 for the Tier 1. FNATIC do not have a glyph. They are going to try to TP to maybe fight this, though.
And up atop, they're going to come on down to the mid lane. That mid tower does end up dropping, but TONGFU able to withdraw. Now, this is such an awkward position for TONGFU. They have two of the best single-target initiator, gank-oriented heroes on their lineup. But as you said, they just don't feel like they can fight at the moment. The Gyro is farming fairly well. He is way ahead in GPM of anyone else on the map. More than 100 GPM lead in terms of what he's generating. And in net worth, he's getting up there quite a bit as well. He's got his phase and his Aquila. That BKB, you really can't underestimate how important that is whenever you factor in how reliant a FNATIC is on Puck and what he can do. Hani, it basically makes or breaks this team, at least at this stage of the game.
His initiations are going to have to be spot on, more or less. Typically, you want to try to catch the Storm. Bane is nice, and of course, King Jan the Batrider would be nice too. The Gyrocopter is okay, but he's going to have a BKB really soon, so yeah, you're not really going to want to initiate on him anymore. The main thing is, you want to prevent your Chen from getting lassoed or went on by the Storm. That's the big thing, because if he can get the Chen and the mech off, or excuse me, the heal and the mech off during the fight, then you're pretty much good to go. I think FNATIC right now are definitely in really good shape, and because of the fact that Trixie, unlike last game when he was doing this build, I felt like when you're behind, going Midas phase is a little bit risky because you have no real team fight. Now they do. So I think more or less this is the inverse of last game, where TONGFU had really good lanes and I felt like it was going to be tough for FNATIC to deal with, but they pull it out with one really good triple kill and push in bottoms. So still anyone's game, of course, but FNATIC, I would like to see them still applying some pressure.
Yeah, I just pulled up the goal graph. That was my concern as well. They have that momentum, but now they're beginning to just kind of peter out. And they're doing this to themselves. It's on them to keep that sense of urgency, to make things happen on the map. TONGFU is happy as can be to have some time to farm up some more items, especially on that Gyro. Gyro's item progression absolutely huge, because they're relying on him to not only survive in these fights, to continue to pour out magic damage with Rocket Barrage, but they want him to be building physical damage very soon. He's already got the phase, which certainly helps, but after that BKB, it wouldn't surprise me at all to see him skip going with any kind of a Helm of the Dominator, and instead just go straight up with some kind of a damage approach that'll allow them to begin to be a little bit more, to basically to put this Storm Spirit and this Batrider to use, because so far these two heroes have done very little else other than farm.
Well, Mu hasn't really had a choice, unfortunately. He got ganked twice before level 5, and that is the nightmare if you're a Storm. You do not want to get ganked before level 6, because what ends up happening is you can't escape it. He's very vulnerable during that time. So that's actually one thing that worked in FNATIC's favor, is when No-Tail had to leave his jungle, mid actually became easier to gank. So Mu, unfortunately, receiving a couple of deaths in the early game, and they could be going for another one here, but I don't think they have vision of the high ground. Wow, they are so close to getting revealed by Mu.
Hani with a passenger. Oh, this could be bad. There we go. He gets a waiting rift off on one. BKB, though, going to buy Hal some time. And Era stunned out there. They're going to mech through it. Damage being done on both sides. Hand of God gets it back up, and Hal locked down with the net. What a coil! Got the two they needed. Sanxing chasing Hani away, but the fight now beginning to turn. It's 2 for 1 so far. Mu reinitiating, flies in trouble. Hani trying to help him out, but one more auto attack, enough to make it a double kill for Mu. Hani trying to bottle through after the phase shift. Trixie's auto attacks, enough to force Mu out, and he will be netted. What a play as FNATIC manages to make it a full 5-man wipe and blow this game wide open.
That was superb, honestly, by FNATIC. They walked up the hill, they saw that TONGFU was more or less out of position. That BKB just finished. He used a 10-second BKB, and he was so low by the time the rest of his team got there that How simply couldn't fight. I mean, how are you going to fight when you have 20% HP? Era's at full. The Hand of God and the mech were both used. FNATIC just had way too much in the tank for TONGFU to compete that fight. But you kind of have to fight it if you're TONGFU, because if you just let your carry die and then they walk into the tower, there's a good chance they're going to lose it anyway. So they commit. They unfortunately make not the best trade in the entire world, and FNATIC just getting more and more momentum here.
And well, but see, here's the problem, Draskell. That fight, as good as it was, as phenomenal as it was for FNATIC. You look at the gold, all that really netted them was about 2,500. And granted, it is still very early on, but the fact that they had that downtime that allowed TONGFU to get themselves back into it, to get the gold closer to 0, means that now they have to continue to have that urgency. They don't want TONGFU to be able to do what they're doing now, which is smoke and try to take a target of opportunity, and that target is going to be no. Hani just blown up. I mean, what else can you say? TONGFU jumped him immediately, and Hani again, the start and end, the beginning and end of the effectiveness of FNATIC's lineup, you know, no doubt. And we're going to see Fly actually sit home by Chen, and yep, Chen Airways gets him back to safety, but TONGFU taking down a very important target there. Boots of Travel actually picked up on this puck, as he wants his mobility to be not just high, but global.
Yeah, the Boots of Travel for me is 50-50. On one side, it does let you be at every single fight, which is a puck. You really want that.
Right.
That's pretty much the main reason why you buy bots in the hero. The mobility to be able to farm is secondary, because most of the time Trixie or Era are going to be farming what you would teleport to regardless. So that mobility is great, but he has less than 800 health. And I think we've just seen the problem with having less than 800 health when you're against a team who has a Blink Initiator and somebody who has darn near global initiation in the Storm. So once the Orchid is done on Mu, that puck is going to become food for him if they're not fighting in the 5 versus 5. So I don't know, man. The Boots of Travel for me, I'm really conflicted on it.
We see the Shadow Blade now done. Hang on, we're going to have an initiation on the move. They're going to... Oh, Fiend's Grip! Banana in the right place at the right time, and Hani cleaned up. Moo going to be able to jump to safety, and Banana able to slide himself back to safety, because Bane doesn't walk, he slides. He's a boss like that. But 18 and a half minutes in, and TONGFU, now this is, again, going back to game 1, this is the kind of plays I expected to see out of FNATIC. It's a very surgical approach. They are derailing and delaying any future aggression out of FNATIC every time they get a pick like that. And yeah, especially when it's Hani. When it's Hani that's dropping, they just can't do anything without him. And FNATIC staying a long time on their side of the river to be in this kind of shape with this kind of a lineup.
Well, TONGFU, the other secondary effect that their ganks are having is if you look at them right now, King J is actually getting closer to his own BKB.
Yep.
Hao has a BKB, of course, and Moo's probably going to be making one after his Orchid. And at that stage, heroes like Venomancer, the Puck, the Chen, they fall off pretty significantly. So I think FNATIC probably wanted to have more done by this stage in the game. They've gotten almost every single outer tier tower except for the tier 2 mid. But you want to have map control against TONGFU. You don't want to let them have areas to farm, because once that happens, Era had such a poor start that he doesn't have enough right now to really carry the team by himself. And Trixie doesn't either. I mean, Trixie's still farming very well, but they need more time. And the more time that goes on, the less relevant that hero like Venomancer and, to a lesser extent, the Chen actually becomes. So TONGFU, I still feel, are doing pretty well for themselves, but FNATIC, they've realized they have to do something, so they're smoked up.
Hani looking for a big coil and a big rep. He is moving so quick, man, with the bonus from smoke, from drums, and from those Boots of Travel. That is a very quick puck. And they are just north of the majority of TONGFU. If they can get an angle here, this could be huge. They're getting in a position on the high ground. Here come the familiars. And dropping down wards. And then now the Venomancer spotted out, as well as the rest of them. So a big missed opportunity. TONGFU at an awkward angle there. They just couldn't find the angle of initiation before the smoke wore off. So FNATIC comes away wanting.
That hurts as well. Any waste of time for FNATIC, I think, is a bit amplified. The Nature's Prophet's going to help a little bit, and all Mu ends up getting picked off in middle lane, overstaying his welcome again. I actually don't know why he was there. Oh, maybe I do. Maybe he was waiting for his team to do Roshan.
Let's see FNATIC charging back out now. Coming out in mass. And that's going to force the back from TONGFU, waiting for a better opportunity to try Roshan. It's 12-7, 19 kills in a 21-minute game. 3,000 gold, the current lead for FNATIC. The experience damn near even. But when you take a look at the overall net worth, you can see the Gyro still on top. Profits gold game beginning to kick in, but really Era has recovered so well on this lifestealer. For a while there, he was just in some trouble. It just looked like he was not going to be able to get the start that the lifestealer wanted, but bouncing back, now has his armlet, his drums, and his phase boots, and he's in great shape to fight. But again, it's all about the positioning of the Bane and the initiation. Single target initiation coming out from the Bat and the Storm Spirit. And you can tell, I mean, FNATIC with this kind of lineup and with this kind of lead should be playing a bit more confidently, but there's just no room for error. If they mess up and end up losing one of their key heroes very early on, they just have to back, and TONGFU can rout them.
Yeah, the thing about TONGFU too is they can chase so well. I mean, you have a Blink Bat Rider and you have a Storm. Those are two of the best chasing heroes in the business, especially at this stage in the game. So FNATIC, if they lose a little, they're most likely going to lose a lot in terms of team fight, so I totally agree with you on that front. And with the Orchid finished, if they want to try to go for team fights, I feel like they can. They can actually focus Era with an Orchid, and they can focus the Chen or the Puck, pretty much whatever target they decide is the highest priority at any given point. That's the strength that a Storm with an Orchid actually gives you. Not many heroes can do that because either A, they lack the initiation range, or B, the item progression of just a straight Orchid doesn't really make sense. So I do like TONGFU right now in terms of their team fight potential, because the more time that FNATIC spend on their side of the map not really doing anything, it's hurting them more than it's hurting TONGFU.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I'm getting on the same page with you. And how often do we see this? Whenever you have this kind of a lineup where a Chin lineup has a lead, and granted it's not huge, but it's considerable enough, and we're going to hang on because this is going to be bad. What a beautiful game. Could not have been more efficient with it. And this is why you ban the Puck when you see a Lifestealer early on. You do not want to deal with this combination, especially when you're a mobility-based hero who has to be able to use his abilities to have any chance to defend himself, and a very high priority pick there for FNATIC. And I'd like to see more of that out of them. If they're not going to group and push, they need to at least be moving their heroes around in small packs and looking for skirmishes.
Yeah, that's one nice thing that Boots of Travel also gives you, is that if the Puck is anywhere near the Lifestealer or even the Nature's Prophet, for example, you can just get to the fight right then and there, go for the pick immediately. That is some reach that even TONGFU's team with his Storm doesn't have. And every single time the Storm is dead, FNATIC feel incredibly confident because he's one of the only initiators who can go in and maybe go on the Puck and silence him and get back out with no harm basically done. So that opens room for the Bat Rider to go in, and so on and so forth. FNATIC, they're not going to be able to push the tier 2. Unfortunately for them, Moo is already alive. And the next big team fight, I think, might even just end up in a Roshan kill. I'm not sure if FNATIC would go for the tower this early on because it's still only 23 minutes in. Feels like a much longer game, actually. But if they get a good team fight, they're not going to have the time, I think, to do both. Well, I guess tier 2 mid is actually pretty low. But FNATIC very aggressively positioned here at the moment, and TONGFU are setting up around Roshan right now.
I'll tell you what really scares me for FNATIC is the build how's going, and this is what I was talking about. They're, not going for something like a farming build, going straight for the butterfly. Now, what's going to happen, especially if TONGFU is able to take a free Roshan here, it's going to be impossible for FNATIC to really put on any kind of concerted pressure. I mean, they could take a win in a big team fight, but the idea of them being so strong that they could just overwhelm an Aegis on a gyro at this point is really just a little bit of wishful thinking. They're going to get this for free. And FNATIC spending a little bit too much time being cute in the jungle. They're going to end up giving up a free Rosh. That is devastating because it is so, and they actually put it on the Storm as well. So having Moo ready to come back up with a full health bar and full mana bar after he dies in one of these fights and be able to, as we said, chase or clean a fight up, it's going to be gigantic. But the gyro, again, getting a butterfly, once he has magic immunity and he has the evasion of a butterfly, how's FNATIC going to damage it? They just don't have any other way, and it's pretty obvious, but even their magic damage before was not that impressive, and that was negated, but at least they had the Lifestealer to fall back on with his right click. Once that's negated, or at least mitigated, it's going to be just so hard for them to be able to bring down that gyro.
They're really going to be counting on Trixie getting a Hex. That's pretty much the salvation for that issue. And the thing is, if he gets the BKB off before the Hex goes out, then the team fight's going to go really bad for FNATIC. Like, as you said, a Butterfly is going to make it so he's pretty much untargetable. And if it happens the other way, and they manage to jump him and actually kill him since he was not the recipient of the Aegis, then it'll be a completely different story. But of course, the Hex isn't really even close to being done. Trixie still needs about 2,000 gold for that to happen. And TONGFU are actually baiting out the Storm right now, which is interesting because if he has an Aegis, I don't think that FNATIC would go for him anyway. And yeah, I don't really think anything much is going to happen to this.
Yeah, it looks like that FNATIC not all that interested in taking the bait. But I mean, more and more, again, this is FNATIC is, they moved around so much, so well early, and now here we go. We are going to see Hani look to make something happen again. Trixie, right there, he's got an invis rune, so trying to bait out the Prophet, making it look as if he's overextended a bit here in the jungle. We can see TONGFU's grouped up just north of Hal. The rest of FNATIC is spread out. Oh, if Hani decides to go for this, it could be problems. And let's see how much he is willing to commit. Doesn't look like all that much. He's going to spot him. Is he going to go? He is. Now he's got a lot of help behind him. Hal taking a lot of damage with the Fiend's Grip is there. Hal, cooldowns, has the rest of his team coming. King J there to lasso back Hani. That's a dead Puck. And now the Nightmare, No-Tail trying to do what he can. But Moo comes in and grabs the Roshan, the teleport did work. So Chen trading himself for the lifestealer. But that's exactly what I was saying. If he sees him, that was actually bad that he saw him that time, because it was too nice of a target, too juicy of a target to pass up, but he had a whole team behind him at TONGFU, getting 2 excellent kills, and this is more time that TONGFU has to farm, and more importantly, that butterfly is now complete on how FNATIC has officially run out of momentum, and they're going to have to find a way to get the engine churning again as we approach 30 minutes.
I was saying in my head, I was like, don't do it, man. You're too close to the base. Even if you can't see anybody, there's no one visible on the ward in the jungle. It was a really questionable decision, but maybe FNATIC just feel like they had to do it. You know, maybe they felt like they didn't have a choice. They knew that at some point they were going to basically run out of time, and the gyrocopter was going to get to a stage where he's not really stoppable. Whereas FNATIC have one real core hero on the lifestealer, and then I guess you could consider Trixie on the Prophet a secondary core. TONGFU has a Storm and a Gyro. And a Storm in this case I think is going to be doing a bit more work than the Nature's Prophet will, because Prophet just needs more time.
Right.
Whereas Storm goes for a very aggressive item quickly, Trixie needs more time to finish his Hex, and luckily for FNATIC that time is actually going to be soon. But I do feel like you were saying, TONGFU looking to be really good in terms of position right now. The next Roshan is going to be probably 6 or 7 minutes, and TONGFU are probably going to be looking to make use of Moo's Aegis before it fades.
Yep, we can see they're smoked up, and the line is drawn, taking them right into the Radiant jungle. This could be a disaster if they're able to get in. If they walk along the line they've drawn, they might be able to get the Chen and have the Vino and the Lifestealer cut off. Here we go. Sanshing spots him. There's the lasso used. Fly never had a chance. Now they're going to pursue it out. And that's actually a lost gem. That's worth mentioning. And they're going to go ahead and try to get the Chen creeps, but not going to work out. But losing the Vino, of all the heroes they could have lost there, that was probably the one they're most likely to absorb. 20 seconds until he's back up. And let's see if they want to push off of it. That Aegis doesn't have very long at all. Yeah, we're talking less than 6 there, about a minute and a half actually, until Moo has his Aegis fade. He's got 2,600 gold on him, so if he does want a BKB, he's certainly making fine progress towards it. Only needs about another 1,000 gold to put it in his inventory now. And they are going to go ahead and walk down the lane. Looks like there's going to be no contesting of this. Perhaps trying to just get some split push going with Trixie atop.
That's pretty much their only option. They clearly can't defend. They bought the gem for defensive purposes. When you're playing against a team that has amazing initiation, dewarding your jungle is almost a must. You know, you want to make sure that they can't see you, so they feel a bit more hesitant about playing that aggressive. But TONGFU, they get it for free. That actually hurts them so badly because, I mean, how can they even afford a gem if you're FNATIC right now?
Yep.
The supports are always going to be very strapped for money, and losing something like that is a massive, massive impact in the game. And Trixie and Hani here inside of the woods for TONGFU. They're trying to find somebody, but I don't really think they're going to get the opportunity. The one nice thing is that the Hex is done on Trixie, so if they do catch somebody, they can kill for sure now. It's not going to be like before where Hao was able to get the BKB and his team support. Even if his team is there, if they focus him, he most likely will end up dying.
TONGFU playing this very patiently. The Aegis reclaimed in 30 seconds, so it doesn't look like they're going to get any real use out of that. And they may just wait out another Aegis, and like FNATIC it's reached that point where they're so built, especially the Gyro. Again, you can't even engage him. He's about to go buy a Demon Edge, most likely. We'll see if he does stop off and pick it up. Nope, just going to blow on by. He's got 3,300 gold in the bank. So we'll see what item he wants to pick up. There's the BKB bot on the Storm Spirit. And they're running out of targets, man. They're running out of people they can actually do damage to.
That's pretty much the recurring problem. Their lineup, like FNATIC's lineup, has a good damage split in terms of how much magic damage they have versus how much physical.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that can backfire when your physical damage dealers aren't farmed enough to do enough to the heroes that have BKBs, and that's kind of what's happening right here. And a lot of that goes back to the very early game when we saw Era. I mean, he is still trying to recover. It's 31 minutes in.
Yeah.
This lifestealer has 113 CS. That is below 5 CS a minute. That is really, really hard to deal with, especially considering right now the gyrocopter is almost at 300, so he's closer to 10 CS a minute. And Hao just bought a reverse, so I think he might just be going straight for the Satanic, just be totally unkillable, walk up the ramp, attack the tower, and just yell, "Come at me." I think that's pretty much the goal.
And right now, I mean, FNATIC, it's one of those bizarre games where they had so much momentum and seemed to be in such a good situation leading things off. But look at the gold graph. It is, I mean, it's been slow. It hasn't been a gigantic, abrupt change. but TONGFU is just more efficient in their farming. They can play much more aggressive when they choose to do so, because FNATIC, the only way FNATIC's aggression really works is in the early phase they can get away with running 2 or 3 around, but now that you're at 30 minutes, that's much more difficult to do. What you want to do in this situation is begin to just 5-on-5, and they're not bad in that department one little bit, especially if they get the jump on TONGFU, who has 2 great single target initiators, which tend to be the best getting the jump on you. But they've just waited around so long that TONGFU is just getting too full. Like they have too much stuff, too many items, and yeah, I mean, Hal's not far at all now from finishing that Satanic. I mean, he's gonna be there very, very soon.
And once that happens, even with Era's damage, I seriously doubt they'll be able to kill him. They'll need like a Hex before the BKB while the Satanic is like on in order to even kill him, which is a pretty hard window to find. But I think they could still kill him. It's just going to be very difficult, because say you do focus Hao, right? You go into the fight, you Hex him right away, you go in, you have a Storm for counter initiation, and you have a Batrider and a Bane. That's a really, really scary counter-initiation squad, at least if you're in FNATIC shoes right now. But you kind of get this feeling of helplessness right now for FNATIC. I mean, really, what can they do? Can they walk in and take a fight against Hao with as farmed as he is? Because Era went essentially a mid-game item build, and he had to. I'm not saying that he really had a choice because he was so far behind, but because of the fact that he's gone a build like this, he wants to try to be active because he realizes his team's purpose is during the mid-game. Well, it's getting past mid-game now, and they haven't gotten enough. They needed a Rax. They haven't even killed the Tier 2 mid yet. And TONGFU, during the ultra late, the way that Hao's building, this is the hardest of the hardest carry builds. Butterfly, Satanic, BKB, and probably into something like an MKB or a crit. That is about as hard carry as you get.
Yep, the way it feels is basically Hao decided it was time for the late game and didn't ask FNATIC, and FNATIC's not too happy about it. And yeah, he's got his Satanic done. He just finished his Satanic. His net worth is, I mean, the only person keeping pace is Prophet, and the problem is that we actually are going to see a tower end up getting destroyed. But you know, the problem is, as farmed as Prophet is, he's not a hero who can just deal with a gyro on his own. And where are the other sources of damage? As you mentioned, Era having to go essentially with a mid-game item build, and it worked. That's the thing. FNATIC was in very, very good shape. They had taken map control. They had put TONGFU back on their back foot. A couple of bad decisions and a little bit of wasted time here and there, though. And, you know, this is what we talked about during the prelims whenever we casted TONGFU. TONGFU is just a because they never get impatient. They don't feel pressed. They don't decide that they have to go do something because they're behind. If they feel like their composition is good enough to stand on its own legs 10 minutes from the time that they fall behind, they will just sit back and make you execute to finish them. And really, FNATIC just didn't.
More or less, and FNATIC are finally taking the initiative here too, which is a good thing to see. They're going towards the Roshan pit, but TONGFU obviously know it's going to be up as well, and they have actually counter-smoked, but I don't believe there are any sentries down. Oh, here we go.
Banana going to be seen. He's way out front. Oh, what a coil! He got everyone with the waiting rift as well. Moo going to reinitiate. BKB is up, but the great initiation coming out of Haughty. How? He's hexed out. He's down to half health. He's used the Satanic already. Moo can do little but drop a remnant, and now he's isolated out. He's silenced out, and he will drop. How's there, though? King J going to get the lasso out on Era. They actually chained the ultimates there. Not the best execution. Buybacks on both sides. Banana chasing him out. Wow, Moo coming from nowhere, coming from downtown. And buybacks aplenty on both sides. Roshan at stake here, and in the end, we actually end up with the exact same thing we started with, FNATIC ahead by 3 kills.
That initiation was the only reason that team fight went even a little bit well for FNATIC. I mean, what more could you ask for? The downside is Chen actually died, I believe, or didn't get to use his heal.
Yeah.
Something happened to Chen and he didn't get to use his heal, which is a bit of a bummer. But they over-pursued. When you see double buyback after you win the initial engagement, you don't try to go back in, but here we go.
There's the infest out. We're going to see Moo in trouble. Roach still standing. Banana hexed out on top. In the meantime, the call down's going to reinitiate. Hand of God. Not enough to keep him alive. Hal now hit with the open wounds. Roach at about 1/5 health. And that's going to be another 2 for 2. Trading up, check that. It'll be 3 for 2 as Trixie tracks down the Bane. San Shang now in some trouble as the body block from Trixie's treants locked him down just long enough for FNATIC to make it a double kill for the Prophet. And now Roshan might be their prize. And that was such excellent play there. Trixie using the tree as the body block and prevent the retreat and managing to clean up 2 because of it.
I don't understand where Hao was. Like, was Hao just in the pit hitting Roshan the whole time? Because they just completely avoided him, and it feels like, I think he got a double kill, and then they split the fight up, and then Hao decided, I guess, to go for Roshan because he thought the rest of his team maybe could hold off FNATIC, but that was definitely not the case. And we often talk about how farm is very important, but it also depends on who has your farm.
Right.
And Hao has basically all of their farm. He is almost doubling the next highest in terms of CS on his team.
Yep.
So if he's not actually in the fight and being active, FNATIC have a very, very good chance of being able to eliminate the other 4, and I think that's more or less what happened. So they give the Aegis to Trixie. Honestly, it would be better on Arrow, but of course he was dead. He couldn't really do anything about it. But winning those 2 engagements back-to-back, FNATIC definitely not out of this yet.
Honestly, you have to identify that as what it is. First of all, it was one of the most amazing puck initiations in tournament play I've ever seen. He caught everyone, and like you said, that was the reason they won there. Without that, that's probably a turnaround, especially after the buybacks. However, Hani just playing a phenomenal game. He's actually picked up a sheep stick of his own. Having the Scythe of Ice is one more way to cope with this gyrocopter. And gyro is getting huge, make no mistake. 3,700 gold. But you want to talk about huge? How about nearly one-shot buying an MKB for Trixie? The guy's inventory, actually he just did, never mind, there's not almost. The guy now has an MKB. He is hitting very hard, 290-ish damage coming out of this Nature's Prophet, and it has really been the play of Trixie and Hani that have held FNATIC together. And that's not to say the rest of the players haven't been doing well. It's just that the composition that they drafted required them to make some plays in some big situations, and they've gotten that out of 2 people, and that's these guys.
Definitely really solid performances out of them both, and FNATIC now smoked up. They want to try to go on mid. There's a DD on this puck as well, and like you said, he finished up that Hex. If they get one more decent engagement, considering it's 38 minutes in, right now the only person on the side of TONGFU who has buyback is the gyrocopters, so it's getting to that stage where the fights are having more and more impact, and it's really anyone's to take. If FNATIC get that one good engagement, if Hani gets a coil and a silence like he did last time, and there's that kind of follow-up now with the Prophet having an MKB, they could very easily just snowball that into a Rax.
Hani gonna cross the river, and they will be spotted. There's a ward, yep, and they know it. So dewarded with that gem formerly possessed by FNATIC. They lost that, of course, when the Vino died, but for the moment, able to dodge out the gang. Now they're going to go for it again. That's no tail up front. Now they're going to make sure that they have their chain of initiation down. As we've seen time and time again, whenever they get the jump on TONGFU, hit a couple of key targets, most notably the gyrocopter, being able to force him out of fights. That's whenever they're at their best. And he has 5,000 gold right now. I mean, take a look at the KD. Certainly FNATIC in great shape there. Net worth, the Prophet is keeping pace, but basically outside of the Prophet, at this point, Hao is doubling the farm of the Lifestealers. So, there is going to come a point where, as good as the LS is in most situations, even though he's got a couple of core items, he's just not going to feel nearly as useful as he once did. And really, in terms of physical target or physical DPS against Hao, he's already there. There's just very little he's actually able to do to this Gyro, who has 27 armor, a butterfly, and in case he does get in trouble, a Satanic. So essentially, things are coming down. This Prophet is going to have to take over a lot of carry responsibility.
And that's why it goes for the MKB in this case, just to have some surefire damage on Hao. If push ever comes to shove, they can maybe take him down in the pinch. The one, I guess, upside to the fact that Hao is so farmed is, hey, he can only really buy one more item after the next one, right?
Right.
I mean, he's going to have a data list soon, and then he can go one more item, and then his inventory is pretty much full. But as I said, this is pretty much the de facto, I'm going to carry my team with 4 or 5 extremely expensive items, and then, of course, your boots and whatever else you decide to go for. But I don't know, it's interesting because looking at it on paper, you figure TONGFU during the team fights are going to be nigh unstoppable just because of him. But then you see them win the Roche fight basically 2 times in a row, and that's with TONGFU buying back. Sure, FNATIC did too, but it shouldn't really happen.
Right. Now it all comes down to positioning, and the bottom line is it was a great set of plays out of FNATIC at that Roche fight, and a couple of misplays, as you mentioned. Where the hell was Hao? He just, for whatever reason, was not a part of the second half of that engagement. So credit and fault due on both sides, but the result is FNATIC is on the aggressive. Hani has had a passenger for a while. Here we go, gonna jump on Hal, he's silenced out. BKB's there, Lasso trying to bail him out, and he's forced staffed away. Hani now reinitiated upon. Can they get him? Hand of God is not enough. Trixie has the Aegis popped away, and Era trying to retreat will be doing so right into a call down, and now No Tail able to TP away as they lacked any kind of ability to stun. But in the end, FNATIC trying to play aggressive. That's what happens whenever they're just unable to drop the gyro and TONGFU doesn't make any mistakes. The fact that he survived was a brilliant play made by whoever has the force staff. I didn't even see who had it, but somebody must, because that's what happened. There it is, Mr. Visage, Sunshine with the force staffing him to safety. He was so low, and if gyro dies there, and I don't think he had, well, yeah, he may have had enough to buy back, but forcing a buyback would have been huge in itself. But a great play by Sunshine.
Well, not only that, but the counter initiation by King J. I mean, he was there almost instantly as well. I think he was actually lassoed onto the Lifestealer before they even pushed him out. So that's what I was saying before. It's like, yeah, you can hex and you can go for him, but it's not like TONGFU has nothing to stop you. They have a lot of single target disables, and their range is great. So even if you think you're going to be able to catch out Hao, there's a good chance that his team's going to be there to help him pretty much immediately. And Hao does finish the dayless, which means that he only needs one more item. He can sell that Ring of Aquila, get a couple hundred extra gold for that, and then just decide to make his final item, whatever that may be. So FNATIC, I feel like if their laning phase didn't go so poorly for them, and I don't mean poorly in the sense that they weren't able to find kills, because No Tail still did, but poorly in the sense that Era had 10 CS at 7 minutes,
right,
this game would have been totally different by now, because he would have had maybe an MKB himself, or his damage output, and at least in some sense, would be higher to the point where heck, he might have died there in that circumstance rather than getting away with about 10% HP. So FNATIC, they do need to find that opening, but the thing about TONGFU is that they're really not giving it to them.
No, not at all. And you know, it's dire straits when you look at an Era played Lifestealer who is hitting for, when the armlet is toggled on, about 240 damage, and then you go, but that's not enough. When it's not enough because your gyrocopter with flak cannon is going to be pouring out 350-ish damage every single time he pulls the trigger, that's just something your supports can't stand up to. Poor Vino is going to end up being four-shotted by that, even though he's at a decent level at 13. Poor Chen can only take 3 shots before he drops to flak cannon. And the range at 1,000, I mean, he's just not going to be able to be anywhere near the vicinity of these fights.
Flak Cannon is going to start being like the one-shot No Tail ability.
Yeah.
No Tail's got 900 health. I'm pretty sure if he gets 1 or 2 crits, it's just game over. Like, there's not really going to be anything he can do about it. And he doesn't have enough money to buy any other support items, which is kind of a big deal. And we were talking earlier about the force staff that the Visage has and the medallion. The supports of FNATIC don't really have the luxury to afford those items. And force staffs can have a huge, huge impact in the later game, just being able to force yourself out if you get called down, or be able to be in a better position so you don't get targeted in the first place. And FNATIC, they have been making the most with what they have, which in terms of overall CS and farm is not really that much. The amazing thing is that they're still managing to keep it very close in terms of the overall income. And most of that's due to the fact that Trixie is doing a monstrously good job at splitting the map and finding farm in a very, very tough situation, because normally a Nature's Prophet against a Storm, you don't want to be the Prophet, because you know that Moo can just go in and the rest of his team can be near to follow. So very well played game by Trixie so far, and he has picked up another Ultimate Orb, by the way, so I believe his next choice is going to be either a Scotty or a Manta, but I'm kind of leaning towards Scotty, actually.
After talking to them this morning, you and I spoke to them, we heard them extol the advantages of Scotty over most other Ultimate Orb items once you manage to get up your Scythe device. And I agree with you. I see him getting a Scotty. It's going to be able to tank him up a little bit. He will get some damage. Manta is just an item in this situation. Really, all you're gaining from it, other than a little bit of survivability, of course, you know, be able to split maybe if you want to push. However, it's mostly, I mean, you get the movement speed. That's actually not my words. Those are the words of Era this morning, and why they often choose on heroes like a Prophet or so on and so forth, even on a Shadow Fiend, which is how it came up in conversation. choose to get Scotty instead of a Manta in many situations. So anyway, both teams have been playing cautiously for quite some time. We're approaching 46 minutes in. The gold graph is still very, very even. Less than 1,500 gold separates these two teams. So, you know, the thing is, the gold graph and the experience is actually very much in favor of TONGFU, which is a story in itself. But the gold graph is really kind of deceptive in games like this, because the composition of FNATIC has well had their time of greatness eclipsed. Like, the window of opportunity that they drafted to capitalize on has closed a long time ago. And what it's going to take for them to be able to make things happen now is they just have to out-strategize. They have to outplay TONGFU. If all things are equal, TONGFU has a composition that should win at this stage of the game.
Absolutely. And the weird thing about it, actually, is if Era gets another item, which he's sitting at 4,700 gold right now, I'm assuming his next item choice is going to be MKB, so Trixie and him both have one. If that happens, they might actually have enough damage to take down How. The question is, how good is the initiation going to be, and can they focus him hard enough before King J and everyone else on the side of TONGFU is able to help him out? Because if they can, How not being in a team fight is an instant win for FNATIC, because like I said, most of the gold difference that they have is pretty much How. He's got 557 CS at 47 minutes in. That's completely insane. And he's not any tankier than he was earlier.
Yep.
Because he didn't buy another tank item, of course, after the Satanic. He just went for damage. And he's got actually 6,300 gold right now. And TONGFU going for Roshan. No contention at all coming out of FNATIC. That's cheese. This might be a problem.
Yeah, that's... I mean, I guess I'm a little at a loss. Like, that's a fight that they should feel confident taking. Like, the big threat of TONGFU's lineup is becoming how easily they can crack your tier 3s. There's only one tier 2 still remaining. Just how unbelievably strong Flat Cannon is, because Flat Cannon activates when you attack buildings as well as heroes. So what they're going to be able to do is slow push to death. They have two of the best single target initiators in the entire game, an immense amount of range since they have the Blink Dagger, and almost the Force Staff now on the Bad Rider. But again, it really comes down to the Storm Spirit. He already has a BKB and the Scythe of Ice and an Orchid Malevolence. He has the ability by himself to shut down 3 heroes if he manages to catch them out of position. So what they can do is just walk down a lane, slow push, let Hal walk up to the edge of the steps, activate Flat Cannon. That'll clear the entire FNATIC squad away unless they just want to be taking mass amounts of damage for free. So it forces them to either 100% commit with one hero, which will be Puck, or it'll force them to walk forward and try to stand and fight. And that's when TONGFU's line up against the Shine, because then you have 2 heroes in the Bat and the Storm, and because of the items they built, can literally between the two account for 4 heroes on the side of FNATIC.
Well, the initiation range alone is a problem.
Yeah.
That's something that FNATIC, I think, are probably having the hardest time with, because if you're playing FNATIC style right now, and you're trying to split push, and you're trying to either do that or take an engagement where you can get some kind of blink initiation, with the reach of TONGFU, their ability to react is some of the best that you're ever going to see in terms of their hero picks, especially the Storm. That's the one that is the biggest deal here. And Mu, even though he's had not really the best start, he started off 0-2, and he was level 5 like 9 minutes into the game. Definitely not something you want. They have fully recovered, and Mu has actually played fantastically during the mid-game. Like, his target choice, just his overall counter initiations have been really good, and they are smoked up inside of FNATIC's woods. They're not going to find anyone, fortunately for FNATIC. They're all going to be able to teleport back to base and be safe. But this is pretty much TONGFU's time. Like, they have... Oh, wow, he just goes into the base for Era.
And Era sides down. He's down to half health. Yes, they get him! TONGFU able to get the biggest pick-off they could have possibly hoped for. Bane taking the last hit on the death, and that is crippling. He has buyback. But if he buys back, they're all in. There's the glyph. Buyback's out. This is going to be TONGFU's time to shine. And they've got the entire team pinned back inside of their base. How? Doing mass amounts of damage. Utterly crippling in the amount of damage he can do. And just look at the tower melt. Visage Familiars and nothing but right clicks from Hal. They have to commit here. This is exactly what I was saying they would do. It's an all or nothing. They can't hang back and defend. They have to just make up their mind, otherwise you're going to see Mu jump them. Here we go. There's the lasso onto the Vino. He's going to be brought back, and now Mu's in there. We're going to see the feeds grip onto Era. What immaculate placement out of Banana. Era's going to be scythed out and brain sapped to death. The Aegis does get popped, but that was the last buyback Era had. Trixie Nightmare, they're just going to wait for help. He's going to be Vortex back, and that'll be that. No tail, pursued back and cleaned up. Buy back out of Prophet, but he has very little help. And TONGFU, not done. They're going to go take double racks. Hell, they're just going to push to tier 4s. 56 seconds until the life stealer is back up. And Hao, with his Satanic still available, yeah, he's just going to activate the Satanic, lay into the creeps with Flat Cannon. And now down goes one tier 4. The second tier 4 already down to half health. 40 seconds, there's the initiation. Attempted initiation of Hani. They honestly didn't even blink. We see Hao scythed out. He's going to be netted down. Now we're going to see Vino picked off again. Got the ulti off. Got it on a couple. Moo taking a lot of damage from that Prophet. Hani, though, phase shifting out, trying to buy himself some time. Trixie going to be pursued out by Moo. And GG! A long one in comparison to our first game. FNATIC looked like they had this game, if not in the bag, at least in control, Draskell.
Yeah, their lineup, I really did like their lineup during the early game. FNATIC, they started off with a strategy very similar to what TONGFU did in game 1. It was pretty standard, at least in terms of a push style. And just from the get-go, TONGFU knew exactly what to lane, exactly how to make it so they wasted some time, just enough to the point where FNATIC didn't have the firm foothold that they really want with a lineup like that.
Right.
And small things like that can definitely change the impact of a game.
51 minutes, 46 seconds, the official game time, 22-25. The final kill score, TONGFU blanks FNATIC 2-0. Let's throw it back to James and crew and let them break it down.